the CEO tends to be, at a higher level. He's usually your Wall Street broker, your guy that's a different person. The CEO or the CFO as well, they tend to run, a multi-tiered, companies across the board. Some maybe own 10, 20, 30 different plumbing companies at once.
Our guest today is Dan Quinonez, Chief Operating Officer of the Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors National Association. Dan stepped into the COO role in 2024 while also leading the PHCC Educational Foundation, where he's expanded training programs, scholarships, and workforce initiatives that are shaping the future of the trades. With a background in association management, public affairs, and even 12 years of service in the U.S. Army Reserves, Dan brings a unique blend of discipline, service, and vision to his leadership. In this episode, we dive into how trade organizations are adopting to massive changes from AI to family businesses transitioning or selling and what that means for the future of contractors. You'll also hear Dan's leadership philosophy, including why his number one motto is to be nice, what that really means, and how he balances kindness with accountability to build strong, effective teams. If you're curious about the future of the trades and the power of value-driven leadership, you won't want to miss this conversation. For me, this was one that was super interesting, kept me curious and learning throughout the entire thing, really unique and actually quite enjoyable to learn about. So if you are interested in any of these topics, give it a listen and let's get started. We are live with Daniel. Welcome to the show.
Wonderful to be here.
This is going to be really fun. We were just talking, the work that you're doing is really, really important. And also, it may not be the most exciting industry when people hear about plumbing or HVAC. However, just in the first 10 minutes of us talking, the importance of those things being done well and right is really, really crucial to our health and well-being. So there's so many different things that we are probably going to dive into today, but let's just go ahead and start with telling us a little bit about PHCC. What do you do and who do you serve?
Sure. PHCC is the Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors Association. It's an association made up of plumbing contractors, HVAC, and anyone involved in the industry related around that. It's an organization that's about 100 nearly 140 years old. It's the oldest construction association in America, and it's got an incredibly long, diverse history. And it's one that's critically important to everything we do. Not only do our contractors provide, an essential service, we also, they're the ones that are hiring young tradesmen, young professionals, young kids that want to come out and get into the industry. It's an incredibly successful business. Folks who can start out with one truck have built multi-million-dollar businesses. We've got trucking companies, maybe just with one or two contractors, that employ maybe 10, 20 people, to contractors that employ thousands of folks around the country. And they're involved at all levels, both, in the home, in a small business, all the way to data centers and hospitals and malls and large office buildings and residentials. So it's an incredibly exciting and wonderful organization with a great history, and I'm very proud to serve it.
Yeah, I was telling you earlier that 140 years is probably the
Yeah.
oldest organization that I interviewed on this show. Do you know how it got started?
It really started. I don't know. It's funny. We've traced back to history, and it started, I believe, around New York. But it essentially was to bring plumbers. At that time, plumbing was a very different type of this. It's just the simple things of putting in pipes and how construction went. It morphed into time about dealing with things like clean water, and that was like in the 1920s. I mean, can you imagine what New York City. I'm a history buff, and I love, grew up outside of New York City, but I loved hearing this story. But, when you look at the cities, the way, water was treated, showers, piping, cooking, it was quite horrible. The plumbing industry kind of merged together to kind of find standards, and that's what they met about. They discussed how to do their job better, what type of rules, regulations, eventually codes was developed out of that to provide safe, clean drinking water. And, that's how the organization kind of grew over time.
The growth that it's had since then up until now, what are some of the core things that you guys offer? What are the services that you're providing?
Now, PHCC is an organization, it's a membership organization. We are across the country and, we provide both state, federal, and local chapters. Our state and local chapters provide a sense of community to our members, our contractor members. They get involved in events, they go into learning sessions. Many of the contractors go to get their master plumbing license. PHCC has union members. We also have non-union open shops. And that's what makes our group so diverse and interesting. I kind of consider the plumbing industry, PHCC, to be a community. One of the other areas that we do provide is training of apprentices, young professionals who want to get into the trade industry. There's a very strict set of rules for an apprentice to get into the plumbing industry, and as well as on the HVAC side, the learning that goes into it. Some states require 4 years of apprenticeship, some even five. We have an online academy which helps to provide that training to that individual. And, many of them come out of that program, they're ready to get into the world. But once they're done and get that license in that particular state, then they start thinking about being a better technician, learning more about being a leader, more, dealing with issues on HR, team building, management. And then eventually the hope is they either grow within their company, and they gain business skills through our online academy. And then we also hope that they'll eventually buy their own business and grow their own business. So some of those folks will start out at one or two trucks and then eventually grow to multi-million dollar businesses. And, we have wonderful members that are self-made individuals who started with maybe one or two trucks, maybe making a couple $100,000 in their first year. 10 years later, now some of them are 8 to $10 million in revenue. It's amazing stories. And much of that, they have business coaches. They're very professional. They learn business finance. To be a great plumber doesn't mean you're going to be a great business person. So they have to learn those skills, and many of them are open to that, and they gain a lot of that knowledge through PHGC.
How often is it that the people who are going through the apprenticeship and are actually out there doing the work, how often is it that they become owners versus like, are there any owners that own those companies that never were, like, on the ground actually doing the nitty-gritty work?
It's virtually impossible. It really is. That's one of the things that makes being in the plumbing and HVAC industry, so unique. We always tell young kids in schools there's a change that's happening in our country that, regarding getting a college degree as a form of success. And the thought is, constantly saying, "Well, I've got to go to college to succeed in life." That's not the case anymore. You can go through an apprenticeship, but so much of being an apprentice is, you gain the educational knowledge as you're going through the course. You take your online programs, or you could be at a trade school or technical school. But you also have to have the hands-on knowledge. You have to be in there. You have to get your hands dirty. We actually offer a pre-apprentice course where we talk about you got to get into some dirty crawl spaces, see what's going on in an old building. You have to there's stuff that they have to do. But the difference is you could work at the same company on the corporate side for 20 years doing the same job. The difference is on the plumbing and HVAC space is you'll start out at that lower level, but as you grow as a leader, you grow with knowledge and you gain respect and understanding of what you do. Growing within the company is very different. You no longer, after 10 years, are doing those, going to job sites and doing it. You're leading a team. You become a foreman. You become a team leader and you grow within that company. You decide maybe you want to open your own business or you grow within an existing organization. But the salary ranges are incredible right now. Young apprentices can make, once they graduate, easily get up into the near 100,000 a year in salary right now. And the job security is incredible.
To say, like, there's a lot of things that are gonna get disrupted, but we're always gonna need plumbers.
It's plumbers and HVAC, it's not gonna make a difference. You're gonna need those jobs filled. And it's interesting, we've had this debate here the last few years. AI has not hindered this industry at all, where it's helped. AI's become a partner in our industry. and we utilize it to both train our contractors to make AI almost a thought partner in their business, almost an essential part of your business, and they're using it for call centers. They're using it for helping a technician expedite, writing of reports on site, so they can take on more opportunities to get out there and deal with more customers. They do training via AI. One of our contractors loves to use an answering service called Emily. And Emily sounds like a human being when you call. She just directs you where you need to go. But that type of industry change is actually helping our industry grow faster, which is quite amazing.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Have you found that as time has gone on,
Mhm.
it's become harder to get more people into apprenticeships?
Braj y
Apprentice?
n no, actually, we're getting more and more of people that, you know the obstacle to getting young kids into the apprenticeship side of our industry has been the parents. The parents viewed for so many years, many of them went to college, they saw they frowned upon the trades, particularly plumbing or even HVAC. They're like, "Why would you wanna do that?" And I think what's happened is that kids go to college and find themselves stuck with a major they don't want. They don't know what they're doing. They run up, huge amounts of debt. They graduate with no job opportunities. Look at the market right now. I did an interview 2 weeks ago at actually NBC News about AI taking jobs away from young college graduates by the thousands. I mean, big
Yep.
companies like Amazon, um, you know, Google, they're just banks across the country are saying, "I don't need to pay somebody $50,000. I got AI for $500 a month." Why do that? They do the same job and they're never late, they're on time, they don't have to give them health benefits, and it's in the tens of thousands of young professionals are finding the job market terribly, terrible spot to be in right now. Whereas apprenticeship, getting into it and learning this trade, you can grow quickly, you can gain that job security that you're not gonna have. So, the image has changed as well. HVAC technicians are a good example. So many of them, they go through a almost a customer training. They're trained to have to deal with customers now, be professional, be on time, how you deal with a customer, how do you manage, difficult conversations. This is stuff that, you know, people coming out of college will go into the job market. They don't have those skills. They don't teach that in college.
Right.
They learn to become young business entrepreneurs, and an entrepreneur in our industry, the sky's the limit. We've seen millionaires kinda come out of it within years, like maybe 10, 15 years, and I'm fortunate to see a lot of those stories. It's quite amazing to see.
Oh, very cool. Well, thanks for kind of giving that groundwork for us, and I'm excited to hear a little bit more about your kind of personal journey into this position. Was Give us like a quick kind of bullet point synopsis on what was your journey like before becoming COO here?
It's funny, my dad, for years when I was a young kid, was a small business owner. He owned a bar, and, one of the things he made all the kids do in our family was clean that bar at a young age. A seven-year-old, with a mop and a brush and cleaning bottles. We always had to do that for years. So it was kinda understanding that hands-on, get your hands dirty kind of life. Years later, for some reason, I just always enjoyed being in government and working in politics and, public affairs and lobbying. Over time, I got into that world working for different organizations, particularly in the construction side. And I was always connected to them both, whether it was a home builder or electrical contractor. And eventually, in managing associations over time, I had an opportunity to come to the PHCC, and it was such a wonderful organization. It's almost been about 2.5 years now, and, just, you have to understand before taking the position who you're gonna be with, and I found I could connect very well with the contractor themselves, that plumbing and HVAC contractor. I understand, getting your hands dirty. Most of these people have salted the earth. They built their business from the ground up, so it was easy for me to understand that having a background and, you know, where I was from and how it was, and, it's easy to relate to the struggles that they go through each day.
You had mentioned before we hopped on that
Sure.
there wasn't always a COO in this organization. So What was it that had them start looking for a COO, and why do you think they selected you for the position?
Sure. Yeah, as interesting as it sounds, so this organization, as old as it is, they've had maybe very rarely a CEO, or they usually made it more of an executive assistant type position for the CEO, but never one that served as a partner to the CEO. And Cindy Sheridan, who became CEO right before me, used to head up our educational foundation for about 12 years, and she'd been part membership director for maybe about another 10. So she's been with the organization a really long time. And, when she moved over to CEO, the position of the foundation director was open. And that's where I originally started out as. And about a year into the position, her managing the association side and looking at the foundation, she had hoped that maybe it's a good opportunity to have Dan come over to the association as well as managing the foundation that we do as well. And PHCC organizationally side, we're about a $30 million organization, between
Amazing.
what we have on our foundation, our academy, and the association itself. It's, small, when you look at maybe a business, but not in terms of sheer size of what we have and how big we really are.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wait,
And we have about when I say that, it's just I mean, we have about 3,000 contractor members, but we employ probably about 80,000 people around the country. And like I said, our manufacturing partners, I mean, those are in the millions about the number of people they employ around the world. So anywhere from, like I said before, Milwaukee Tool, Kohler Plumbing, any plumbing fixture, someone like that, HVAC companies around the world. So we deal with them pretty much on a daily basis as well.
incredible. All right. Well, when you moved into the COO position, what was the first 90 days like when you came in?
It was interesting. It was a whirlwind. We had looked, being in the position I was in prior as the foundation director, had an opportunity to really understand my CEO's vision. And Cindy Sheridan was, I believe, the first woman to be CEO of a 140-year organization. So you can imagine the culture change in the organization. It tends to be lean more conservative. It's mostly men. So it was a huge breakthrough for her. And I think she was looking at taking the organization into the modern life. We were still operating in a lot of ways that were like the 1980s. And a lot of our policies and structures were 20, 30, maybe 40 years old and how we operated as an organization. I think my background running organizations in other places I bring a fresh new approach, a more modern uh, view of things. And, organizationally, I learned in the past from a lot of amazing, I've had actually been mentored by CEOs and, leaders in the association business side of things here in DC. So I learned and I took that knowledge and I'm helping Cindy apply it to the association side.
Cool.
Mhm.
So when it comes to a breakdown of your day-to-day responsibilities, what are you focusing on?
It's 2 things, most importantly. We are a membership organization, so my thought here is how do we grow members? It's, that's how that's our core is our membership. And it's that local contractor. We wanna bring in more contract there's probably about 80 to 90,000 plumbing contractors in the United States. And when you add in HVAC technicians and companies, like I said, both small, maybe a couple people in a truck, to thousands of folks involved in a company. So my number one goal is to help us grow and offer services and provide in things they need to help be better, contractors. My second part is really expanding what we do educationally. PHCC only started its PHCC online academy only about 5, 6 years ago. And when we first started then, there was maybe about 100, maybe 200 people taking these courses. Um, I'm proud to say we serviced probably in the last 5 years, maybe about 15,000 students. And most of that is through apprenticeship, both on plumbing and HVAC. Our courses are highly respected, but interesting enough, when I always say this too, there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids going through a plumbing and HVAC program somewhere in this country. At the end of the day, we're all trying to get them into the industry. That's the most important thing. But for our PHCC Academy, we tend to tailor to the person that's about 25, 26 years old, college, yeah, working at Starbucks is not a lifelong career. They wanna build something. They went to college, it didn't work for them. They have huge debt. They're not going anywhere in their career. Our average student's 25 years old, if you can imagine that. 25, 15,000 folks over the last 5 years, and some of the stories are amazing. I've got, folks that I read about. I got a in Georgia, there's, twins, identical twins, both going through our program. Um,
Oh,
I love that. And then New Jersey, there was a great story. I was talking to somebody, um, his father had a plumbing business. He had graduated from Fordham in business finance, hated it. Spent a year doing business finance in Wall Street, hated every minute of it. Said, "I'm not doing this." Went off to work for his dad, went through the PHCC Academy. 6 years later, he took over the family business. He's probably
wow.
grossing about $5 to $6 million a year now, and he's growing significantly. So those are the things. It's hard not to get excited and love what we do. So, both membership and education is where I see the core of our future in PHCC.
It's incredible. Those types of testimonials when they come in, I mean, it just makes all the hard days worth it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really does. It's hard not to be passionate about it, it's, because when you hear the excitement of our members and the folks who work in this industry and, it's a life, it's a community, and they're and it's not about competitors. I mean, they all sit in a room, we talk, shop, we like to say, talk business. They understand you're in the industry too.
Mm.
I always equate it to a community, and that community is very close and protective of each other. Mm.
When it comes to some of those harder days and maybe the testimonial gives you a little pickup,
Yeah.
what are some of those what are the hardest parts of being a COO?
Hardest parts, it's trying to take an organization as old as ours and bringing it into this century. You know, understanding that technology needs to be an ally. I mean, for many years, they were still using this same old Excel spreadsheet to keep track of data. Things that, processes in a business world didn't make sense. I think we also, you get into this complacency in an organization that's been as old as ours, folks that have been doing things for 30 years the same way. We've been doing it like this, and understanding to evolve and change, we need to do that. So there's days that are just you have to sell something that seems obvious to me, but not to the contractor
Or
or our customer base. And that's always one of the things that's taking them, through that journey and the vision of both myself and the CEO, Cindy. We talk about that often. It's getting them to see the vision of what it's gonna look like in the next 100 years.
Mm. Speaking of vision, sounds like there is a lot of change happening and like you said, technology that's coming into play. And even in terms of the COO position, even your guys' organization, this was new for you. Talk to me about the COO position for other contracting businesses. Is that a common position people are stepping into, or what does that look like across the board with the COO title in the plumbing industry?
It's strange because so much of the industry is evolving, and there's a new element that's in the plumbing and in the HVAC space. It's private equity, and private equity is Wall Street driven. They're profit driven, and that's what their primary goal is. So they are coming in now, and you know they're buying your mom and pop country plumbing shop and taking that and making it into more of a corporate structure, and we're seeing more of that growth happening. They tend to, that the CEO tends to be, at a higher level. He's usually your Wall Street broker, your guy that's a different person. The CEO or the CFO as well, they tend to run, a multi-tiered companies across the board. Some maybe own 10, 20, 30 different plumbing companies at once. So one CEO can't handle that. It's just not feasible. I always see is once you get to that point as a CEO, when you're so inundated and so overloaded and so swamped by the day in day out business, you have to be able to delegate your vision to someone else, and that's where the CEO comes into play. You're there to be the the tool to your CEO. That's the person the CEO needs to turn to help implement the vision. And especially the larger the organization you get, it's just more common. It's a big part of that. Ironically, what I see now is more of the plumbing companies that are large. Maybe when I say large, 100 employees, they tend to see the CEO as their successor to take over the business. And it could be a family business or, one that's, they want to keep that legacy growing. And they create the position of COO as the person they're going to see take over the business and build that out in the future as well. So it's good to have that training go into place. I always found in the discussion with my CEO, a lot of the organizations in DC have a COO. And part of that, number one, is, succession. In this world today, we never know what's going to happen. There's so many, so many things could happen, go wrong. Something can happen to somebody. If you don't have a number two in place when something that happens, you're going to struggle. The organization will struggle. When you over rely on one person, it could cause incredible dissension and problems when that person is not available no more. So that's part of the other reason too. I think we see, my CEO wanted to see a COO position created.
That makes a lot of sense, and, I don't know if you've ever followed, any of Cody Sanchez's content. Have you heard of her?
I have, yeah. Actually, I do watch it occasionally.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
she's
Uh,
talked about kind of that thing around, like, family businesses that have been around for a long time, and they don't have anyone to really take over the business, so
yes.
she talks a lot about going in and kinda hustling your way and then eventually asking for a little equity and then eventually just trying to kinda take it over, even do a full buyout, which a
Yeah.
lot of young people have been jumping on the buying the business train, and I know that there's
That's where it's coming from. It's happening on the plumbing, on the HVAC space because so many of these businesses started out as family businesses, and over time we have family businesses that have 100 years old. I see them. Some of them go 3, 4 generations, and but eventually, it's somewhere along the line, the kids don't wanna take over the family business, and one of my contractors here in our foundation. He's a former chair of our foundation, wonderful person out of New Jersey. And his kids are doing something else. They don't want to be in the family business, even though he's built it to, I mean, I think well over $10 million size business, and he wants to sell. He wants to retire. He's got his, boat and, house down the beach, and he's like, it's time, but there's nobody to take it over. So he actually has brought in a COO and created for the first time as someone that could eventually continue his legacy. And we got hundreds and hundreds of stories of that. And PHCC as an organization, actually, we partner with Federated Insurance, and we talk about succession planning. Who do you want to take over? Some of them just they don't have anyone. And that's when they turn to private equity and sell the company that route rather than it just continuing.
well
And that's a change. I mean, but it's hard if you've built a family business that spans 50, 60 years and you're just selling everything to someone else who's gonna completely transform it and change it. It may not even be around, the name, but when you have a family that's had a business for 60, 70, about like I said, over 100 years old, it's tough, it's, 3rd, 4th generations going on right now. I've a business essential leadership class that we give, and I've got 3 people there. I think they're the 4th generation to take over their family business. So, they're the nephews and nieces. They don't even have the actual kids anymore at that point. So, yeah, it's fascinating.
it is really fascinating. Yeah, thanks for kinda giving the scoop on that. I mean, definitely, like, my business brain starts
Yeah.
spinning with ideas. There was something you filled out on your show form around your personal mantra of "Be nice."
Yeah.
Could you tell me more about that?
I always joke, as somebody said, "Isn't that from that Patrick Swayze movie, Roadhouse?" To a degree, yes, it is. No, I actually had a mentor years ago. Um, he was a prominent politician in New Jersey that I worked with, my prior world. And he always said, "Just be nice. You don't know what's going on. Be nice just means, not avoiding difficult conversations, but, you see sometimes that a COO or someone in charge feels they have to be this heavyweight, I'm the boss, I'm the king, follow what I want. No, I mean, it's, be nice, be calm, listen to what folks are saying, take the opinions in, see the world around, see the different, stuff that's happening right now. Value everyone's opinion, stay calm. Difficult conversations, people look to you for leadership, and being nice to, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's your team, another CEO, to a waiter, to a janitor, to a plumber, to a HVAC technician. It doesn't matter. It's, stay calm and, be nice. Because at the end of the day, you never know where you're going to cross into somebody in the street somewhere. And I will say DC, as much as people talk about it, is an incredibly small town. It may sound like a big city, but it's a small town. I can't tell you I've lived now in the DC area for about 25 years. I cross paths with people all the time that I've seen years ago. Now they're CEOs of an organization. A couple of them are now congressmen, senators I've crossed paths with, and they just remember, you know, being nice, and they remember me in a way that, it's fun. It's interesting to see, "Yeah, I remember you 20 years ago when you were just, a staff person," or something like that. It's fascinating to see. So you just never know. Be nice. There's no reason, take the conflict out of it. I've seen the strong-headed CEOs, and I never found them effective. Very few. Or the I've seen the military generals who cuss at everybody. It doesn't motivate anyone. It doesn't help them see your vision.
And it's really not sustainable either. I mean, my first kinda real job, when I was 19, I sold a special forces leadership selection prep program. I was on a team of all men,
Yeah.
and, the owner was a Canadian Special Forces sniper. Amazing, amazing man.
Yeah.
And, also, he was intense.
Yeah.
And,
Scary.
yeah, it something with my nervous system very early on in my career, having that experience, I just started to, find this, like, nervousness, like, seeing messages and, um, how that kind of transmuted into the next job that I found. I just found myself there was some pattern that was going on where for about 8 years, I found myself working for just, like, really intense people.
Yeah.
And over the last couple years, I've really gotten to work with very different types of leaders, and it's fascinating how much can get done through, like you said, being nice. The, podcast My First Million, they did an interview with cannot remember his name. He's some billionaire that owns one of these AI, maybe it was Zapier. I can't remember exactly, but they were saying how he was the nicest guy they have ever interacted with. And he was like, because he's the owner of My First Million, and he's like, "Maybe it's just because, like, I'm the owner," and he was just being really nice. So, he asked everyone on his team, he was like, "What's your guys' experience of this guy we're working with?" And everyone was like, "He's the nicest guy I've ever met." And so it is possible, and I think being someone that can show that as an example, the ripple effect of the people on your team, I'm sure is gonna go really, really far.
Well, and the part about being nice that I always found, and it doesn't mean you shy from heated and tough conversations and tough questions and having to be there and deal with the difficulty of running in a business. I mean, that's part of it's going to be stress. There's always going to be an organization. It doesn't matter what you do and where you're at, whether you're working behind the counter at McDonald's to working in a boardroom, there's stress at all levels. And, I think over years, it's just learning to be calm and be nice and listen to what folks are saying. That ultimately, that's to me the definition of leadership, and your team respecting you and understanding that, I'm a believer. If you don't love what you do, why do it? How many people do that every day? I can tell you love what you do. I love what I do. why do anything else? Why do something that makes I see people drowning on miserable every day. You gotta look what you have a passion and love doing and get into it. And I think that's the entrepreneurial spirit of that I see both on plumbing and HVAC technicians. They love the entrepreneurial side, these folks. And we see it every day. I mean, you probably interview hundreds of folks that are like that. They wouldn't be in it if they didn't love what they do. They wouldn't have
Yeah.
that passion and enjoy it.
Speaking of the accountability piece, I would love to know, how do you balance being nice, or you had mentioned the word respect. How do you balance the ability to be kind and have this really safe, enjoyable culture where everyone loves what they do, while also holding standards of excellence? What's your approach to that?
I actually it's interesting. That was one of the changes that we made here. It's about accountability. It's about having your metrics, what's your goal? Being an old organization, the whole notion of working virtual was foreign to folks here. I mean, it's like, how can you do that? That's crazy. And then COVID came. And then they started to realize, well, now people can come back to the office. What I found was that it doesn't matter where a person is working is or what they're doing. It's the metrics, having them buy into the goal of what you're trying to accomplish, and it doesn't matter how you do it. You can do it from home, you can do it, remote, or you're doing it in an office. But what are the metrics? So what I did last year working with our CEO is set a series of metrics, membership growth, uh, academy sales, how do we grow our academy sales? What do we need to do? We launched a whole new series of courses in the last 6 months. What's the metrics to build those? What was the goal to get? How many did we want to set up? We're launching a PHCC on demand, which is going to be like a Netflix style videos of all kinds of content related around plumbing and HVAC. It's not going to be your Netflix watching movies, but it's the stuff that they, as a contractor, find they need. There's going to be training visual videos. That was groundbreaking for our organization to move into that tech space where, having an app and going through those. So that is how I set my team up. We set it up in a way that, what are the goals? What do we want to accomplish this year? And, we try to meet those goals. When we collaborate on those goals, it's never, just get this done attitude. How do we do it? What do we need to do? What are the obstacles to get it done? And we work with that effort. And because the difference, our organization, we have a board of directors that are the members, the volunteer members, and we have to report to that board of directors every year. And we usually, probably about twice a year, we'll sit down and we present what the association team is doing, the employees here, and where we're accomplishing, what we're succeeding on. And that should be fun and exciting. To me, that's where we look forward to that. And this past year, like I said, we've had incredible growth in terms of educational opportunities, education sales. Like I said, our PHCC Academy went up to 15,000 um, eh, uh, registered users, which is amazing, in the last 5 years. But one of the key metrics that I said is that, I wanted to go from, $800,000 in sales to 1.2 million in our academy sales, and we did. We're on track to do that for this year. In 3 years, I wanna try to get to 2 million and keep growing on that. And that's, what else can we be doing to make our organization better and grow those metrics? And we do that, and that's the thing. But I get buy-in with our team. Nobody sits there and said, "This is crazy. This is never gonna happen." No, they buy into it, and that's the job I have, is to help that team buy into that.
Would you say that's the kind of the main piece initially up front with, like, for any CEO that's listening and maybe they're in a company that is older or more traditional and they're trying to change things and adapt with the times? Is that the kind of the main thing that you focus on in the beginning, is just really taking time to get everybody bought into why that's important? Or what advice would you give to someone that's wanting to start making those changes?
It is important to have buy-in from your team, and I'll be honest and say, and this is where you could still be nice, but there are times sometimes that the staff, the team in place might not be the best. They may not be the right fit, and, that person may be, from a past administration, they're jaded, they're complacent, and they don't they don't buy into the vision, or they, and I always tell them again, if you're not happy, that's the mantra to me, is adding on. You can be nice, but if you're not feeling passionate about here, you don't enjoy being here, why be here? And, and some people realize most of the time on their own that, yeah, I think I want to go do something else. Or, when you're restructuring sections of our organization, you have to make staffing changes sometimes because the per the folks that may need there are just not the right fit. But there's a way to say they're not the right fit in a nice way, as opposed to just, we see a lot of the corporate just cut 20,000 people randomly. That takes the heart and soul of your organization out. And I think, that's tough positions to be in. I'm fortunate to be in a nonprofit organization where we're not worried about, profitability per se, but I do consider ourselves almost like a for-profit nonprofit. So I do want to see growth in that sense. And the more we grow financially through sales and our programs, the more revenue that we gain, I circle that back into the programs we do, and it's going back to gaining more young apprentices, getting to, more courses, more coaching, all kinds of programs that we develop now, that just constantly grow. At the end of the day, it trickles back to the member of PHCC, that contractor, that company who takes advantage of their membership.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I would be interested in knowing, for these companies that have people growing from the kind of like day to day, the nitty gritty work, to eventually growing through the ranks, and some of these people taking over the COO position, or even coming into a CO position in one of these companies. What is the way that, if you know, like, what are the ways that these companies are supporting their new COOs to learn the business side of it versus the actual trade itself?
Sure. It's interesting, where this industry is so different. The trades themselves is so different. Is, again, you start out learning the hands-on side of the business. Whether it's roughing a bathroom to installing a toilet and putting in pipes. We have young apprentices that do a competition every year at our annual conference, and it's Skills USA in Georgia. Um, these kids in 2 days will completely install a bathroom. I mean, the whole wall, piping, sink, everything. It's amazing. Seeing an 18-year-old kid do this. And but that's the hands-on side. As they grow in their profession, as they get into the trade, that's when I hope they see an opportunity to gain business skills. The number one issue that I see with contractors that struggle the most in building their business or starting their business is business finance. So gaining that skills, learning how to, manage a budget, manage your books, credit, how much in credit impacts your company, gaining those skills, HR, legal, basic business law. These are courses that folks, in our industry start taking once they become a licensed contractor, if they want to be a successful business owner or move up into that position of COO. Many of the folks that achieve that CEO position in our companies, they start having a business background. And it doesn't matter, college is not the necessity of it. I know college dropouts that are now running multi-million dollar businesses. They didn't need that. They were entrepreneurial. They learned. They take advantage of business coaching. PHCC has a group. We have a quality service contractors. It's a coaching, where the coaches will literally come in and help teach a new business owner or an existing business owner that wants to grow, how to be a better businessman, and how to gain that knowledge and experience and training. And, it's fascinating to see that project, kind of happen. Some of them are, like, again, amazing stories of incredible growth once they are able to master that part of the business side.
Awesome. Yeah, the coaching and the mentorship is so important. I was telling you before we got on that I joined Cameron CO Alliance. When I found myself in a CO position, I had no idea what I was doing. So being in a room full of people who are doing the same types of things, or people that have been doing it 20 years longer than I had, and showed me the ropes on things that would have taken me years to learn on my own.
Yeah.
There's also a course Cameron has called Invest in Your Leaders, which is just along the lines of, when someone's moving up and you need them to move into a managerial position, all the key kind of things that they need to learn, Cameron has it so simply laid out in this course. If anyone's listening and that is something that you might be interested in or find value in, that's something you can look up at Cameron Herold's CO Alliance. And just to kind of wrap us up, this has been absolutely amazing, Daniel. But I would love to know, what are you most excited about in the next 6 months, both personally and professionally?
I love, what I do. I get an opportunity to help transform people's lives every day. I mean, I really do. When this young apprentice gets into this industry, I see them grow and learn, and it's wonderful to see that. Now, next month, PHCC is going to have its Connect conference in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and that's the last week of October. We do a competition every year at that. It's a an HVAC competition where I see these young apprentices build, an entire, they rough an entire bathroom in there. These are kids that are going to be passionate about the industry, and they're gonna be part of it. They're young, they're hungry. I get to meet them, I get to shake hands and get to know them over their stories. 2 years ago, we started supporting a program called, World Skills. So folks know Skills USA, which is like a big trade show convention, competition in Atlanta every year. They get about 100 different trades. On the plumbing side, we support that, and we have a kid that's, going to the World Skills. He's 18 years old. He's out of Connecticut. Young kid, got a little mustache, sweet kid, very smart. He won the competition last year. He's going to Shanghai, China next year to compete against 25 other countries on plumbing
I
and
didn't
to
know this was a
change his life. And we had a kid last year, first time we really started supporting this program. He was from Fargo, North Dakota, and he literally never traveled out of the United States. He went to Lyon, France, and competed against other countries from around the world in plumbing, and it's to see his life change from that. You can't help but love that, it's hard not to have that. So the next 6 months, I mean, it's just I am so excited. We're gonna have so many new programs that are launching in our organization for education and training. I love seeing those, like, launching those programs. I'm gonna have an opportunity to talk to our members at our Connect conference again in October, hear what they have to say and, seeing just be able to kind of be the speaking the gospel of plumbing and HVAC, so to speak.
yeah.
It's hard not to get excited about it. It's hard not to have fun. It's you enjoy it. So, it's work and I get paid to do what I love. I sound like a baseball player, you get to do that. So what's not to enjoy? So
Uh, I'm so happy that you are happy in your job. It's important. Well, this has been absolutely incredible for you.
thank you.
Yeah, of course. Who wants to connect with you? Where's the best place for them to do that?
Sure. PHCC.org. It's a wonderful organization on plumbing and HVAC, membership organization. We're across the USA. Please check out our website and learn more about us and our long history. And, if anyone is in the industry, wants to connect and learn more, please look us up.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.